Too Close Too Soon was written in the late 80s. It was published in 1981, and it became, I think it's translated in, 10 or 11 languages now. And the whole purpose of it was because I saw more and more people who were going too fast in their relationships. Speed destroys relationships. And so taking the time to spend 3-4 months in friendship, 3-4 months in premarital, 3-4 months in getting married, take at least a year to be able to do that. If you go faster, you pay a higher price later. So it's either you do it right the first time or you get to do it over. 80% of all divorces end in marriage. So you have to think about that for a second. It'll finally catch up to you. But what happens is we go into them too quickly. We rush through the friendship, we rush through the physical part, we get sexually involved. Most evangelical marriages are because they're sexually involved and they feel guilty about it, instead of taking the time to stop and slow down and not be sexually involved until after you're married. Well, people say, well, that's kind of stupid. I hear this thing about, I knew I wouldn't buy a pair of shoes unless I tried them on. Well, that's true, but how many people would want to buy a cake that somebody else had a bite out of? So that doesn't make any more sense. So what happens, premarital sex builds a lack of trust in the relationship, that you'll sleep with people you're not married to. And the same way with an affair. You have an affair, you break up a marriage, you marry somebody else. Those two people are going to have trust issues. I'm a marriage counselor. I've been doing this since 1970. I have 45 years and 90,000 hours of this stuff. And most of my difficulties come over the issue of trust. Being able to maintain integrity in a relationship, and you got jealousy and all different kinds of things. And so if it doesn't start out morally right, and the issue of monogamy, being monogamous means one person at a time. You don't date 3-4 people, you date one person. When you're done, you date somebody else. If you're involved in a marriage, you don't allow yourself to get involved in the other kind of relationships. You don't spend one-on-one time. You don't communicate. This whole social media thing has allowed us to do all kinds of things. And so what happens, you get into a groove of marrying and divorcing. I have a client that's been married 11 times. And so all of a sudden you say, at some point you got to stop. She goes to work, she meets these guys, they pour their heart out to her, she falls in love with them, she thinks she can fix them, so she marries them, takes them home. She can't live with a drunk, so she divorces them, she goes back to work. So where does she work? She's a bartender. So my advice to her was what? Get a job in a coffee shop. And so all of a sudden you have to come up with practical ways not to repeat the same cycle over and over again. If you're married and got 2 or 3 or 4 kids, you're dragging those kids to those relationships. You don't need to put all that time and energy in that. You've got to stabilize yourself. My mom and dad were separated for 24 years. Neither one of them divorced. Neither one of them got involved with other people. And I can say that one of the greatest things they did for me was I didn't have to deal with a step-parent on either side. I would not have done well. I was 12 years old, and I would not have handled that well. So you have to decide how much time and energy and what it's worth to raise your kids.